Hey, we are here once again at the Verge Technologies podcast. I'm with Jimmy Jobe, CEO and co-founder of Verge Technologies. I'm Fernando Labastida, your co-host. And Jimmy, we were just talking offline a little bit about some of the trends in the industry, where AI is going, especially in sort of like back end type of software, IT ops, et cetera, where investment is going, AI is going. And so I was thinking maybe we could talk a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing out there. Break out that crystal ball, Jimmy.
Well, let's see how clear that ball is, right?
Yeah.
So, well, a couple of things. Of course, the 400-pound gorilla in the room is AI, right? It's the one that's driving a lot of things, and I mean, you can just read some of the tech headlines that are going around in the last 6 months about AI data centers, the fact that they just can't build them fast enough,
Oh,
and the fact that they're looking for alternative energy sources to power those data centers because the grid is just there's spotty is not going to really support conventional power being able to power all these new data centers, right? So they're looking at gas, they're looking at wind, solar, they're looking at nuclear, they're looking at a lot of different ways in order to be able to meet the demand of AI gen data centers, right?
right.
So you say, well, okay, let's assume that, however, that they can solve that problem, and it's a big problem, right? Then it's kind of like, well, how are you going to manage all those data centers, right? How are you going to start driving the cost of managing that data and allowing enterprises to optimize their business processes based upon the algorithms that the AI is going to be able to provide them, right? And so then you say, uh, tomorrow I need more autonomous management systems, management systems that will be able to be self-managed and self-healing. And you say, well, okay, what does that mean? Well, then we come kind of back to the AI and the machine learning in the fact that you've got to be able to implement predictive analytics that are going to drive uh, detect detection in the future, be able to predict workload issues, performance issues before they happen. But not only the prediction, but being able to take action to resolve, prevent, mitigate that occurrence so that it doesn't cause downtime, right? So autonomous management systems are going to be really, I think, one of the big drivers that are going to be needed to manage all of the things that are being put in place today, right? So I see that over the next 5 years is that investment, if you would, that implementation, that learning curve, and there will be a learning curve, right, is going to kind of dominate a lot of what you see out there, right? But almost as important is kind of the storage aspect of all of that data that you're generating, that data that's going to be mined, the data that's going to be run against all the algorithms, right? And I think that it's time that, and we'll see more and more of this over the next few years, is that enterprises are going to need to get a lot better at their data strategies, right? So, you know, what do I have to have in active storage? What am I going to need? What can go to archive storage? What can go to blockchain storage, decentralized storage versus what has to be in centralized storage? Because those are huge cost drivers, especially considering the amount of additional data that we'll be generating over the next 3 to 5 years, right? So I think that companies that can be able to help enterprises put together that tiered data strategy and get it implemented are going to be companies that are going to be very successful, right? Because the problem is going to get bigger, not smaller. And
Mhm.
being able to orchestrate and move large data sets, being able to transition from service provider to service provider based upon the economics behind that service provider. In other words, change service providers, and it doesn't just kill the organization by trying to do that change, right? So autonomous management systems that have mobility and are able to pick up applications and databases and move them from this service provider to this service provider based upon an arbitrage of different factors, whether that be cost, bandwidth, quality of service, lots of different factors that can be weighted to that specific enterprise. Is I believe those systems are coming. They have to. Being siloed into one service provider is a thing of the past. Even Gardner is saying that, hey, look, our average enterprise customer has 4 to 7 different service providers trying to support that enterprise's distributed footprint, right? There's still not an AWS on every corner or an Azure on every corner. Those enterprises have to turn up regional and local colos and data centers and be able to move from points of data collection to much fewer points of data processing to storage, and then be able to distribute that data to their entire organization so they can run faster and harder, right? So I see those as coming. I think some of we're already starting to see, our product, for example, SentientDB, does all of the autonomous management, self-managing, self-healing, predictive workload issues, correcting those workload issues before they happen. But it's just a start. I see in the next 3 to 5 years, the industry turning to that in a large way, right? You're not going to see as many just point solutions, or my solution to migrate applications or database only works in AWS or only works in Google, right? I think that it's got to be moving in the direction that would cause a sea state change across the industry, right? And I think that also starts to point to the service providers themselves, right? They have created themselves nice little silos that they live in, right? Because they make money if you're in their cloud. So, but they don't make money if you're not. So they have been slow. As a matter of fact, you could even say opposing hybrid cloud, multi-cloud management, right? But I think they've got to change their business model, because I think they're leaving money on the table, right? If you could service the enterprise wherever the enterprise was, you could make more money, right? And so it has to be about developing a business plan and a business strategy that may not be the same as if you're in the Azure cloud, but it produces revenue. It gives me control. It gives me a say-so. It allows me to then start mining more and more of the enterprise as time goes on around my services, right? Whether those services are remote, whether those services are in-house, it gives you the ability to really develop new revenue streams. And I think the service providers are going to need to go there, or else they're going to be left behind.
Yeah. Tell me, it's curious what you said about mining their services. Tell me a little bit more about that concept.
So if we think about a large service provider, let's say a Google, that has right now everybody in their cloud, right? There's traditional model, right? And so you say, well, if I could then take as a baby step, start managing some of the infrastructure of XYZ enterprise in their proprietary data centers that are not in my cloud, right? I can provide these autonomous management systems that go across clouds, and I can manage both my stuff in my cloud as well as the stuff that's in their data centers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, well, if I can do that, then I can start wrapping services around the enterprise assets that are in that data center, and I can start drawing more revenue back into Google, right? And the SLAs may not be the same because you're not using their systems, but there is money to be made there, right? And I think that with that, then you start you can start helping to transition. Some of the things might end up in your cloud. Some of the things might end up in somebody else's cloud, but you're the broker that's kind of helping the enterprise through that, and you're making money both ways, right? So I believe that those business models need to, I don't know if they'll manifest themselves exactly the way I talked about it, but those business models really need to evolve to be able to support the enterprise wherever the enterprise is, right?
Yeah. Well, and then so we talked about this rush to build data centers to look for alternative energy sources because of this surge in data created by AI. What do you see as driving this growth in AI data? Is it, you mentioned, predictive analytics, et cetera, and when it comes to what you're talking about, which is, self-healing and being able to prevent stuff, but is the AI, is the surge in data through AI, is it all the front end stuff? Is it the back end stuff? What do you think is gonna be the big driver of this explosion in data, AI
Well,
data?
there's a lot of different ways that AI plays. One of the ways that several of the companies today that have huge valuations are moving down, and that's really being able to help the enterprise optimize their business and optimize their business operations through AI, right? And through looking at the data that AI is producing, right? And that they're providing, right? They're looking at it in a lot of different ways. That and so in some ways you can call that decision support systems, risk aversion systems, or business optimization systems, but it's all about helping the business improve and looking at past performance, current performance, performance that you're predicting in the future, looking at how real that is based upon a lot of different factors that are going through those algorithms to help those businesses make the right decision to move their processes forward and be
Right.
more competitive.
Right. So a lot. So really, the bulk of it you see isn't decision support. Um,
It's that AI is growing in a lot of ways. AI gen, is being able to do a lot of things. And you say, well, that probably generates a whole lot of data. And you say, yes, it does. And how much of that data is being used? Well, I don't know yet, but it's generating a lot of data, right? So I suspect that within the AI world, they'll just like any other new technology, they'll find a lot of things that don't work and are not long term, right? But that will spur on new innovations based upon those failures, right? To optimize it even more, right? And so it will continually evolve and get better. That I'm sure of.
yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Absolutely. So it almost sounded like as though you were predicting that the big service providers, or or maybe not predicting, but saying they're gonna have to do
I
this.
I I believe they have to. I mean, if we look at the current model, the current model is based, I think, on many service providers, is based upon the past. From 2015 through 2022, 23. Well, I actually, even today, their business model is try to get the enterprise all in your cloud, right? Because if they're all in your cloud, right, then you can manage their entire enterprise through your systems, right? Now, the enterprise didn't necessarily think that's a great idea, right? It's vendor lock in, it's, taken away negotiation, it's all those things that most enterprises are not real wild about. But past all of that, it's not practical because that's not the way the enterprise operates. The enterprise has a distributed footprint and it needs wherever that footprint is, whether it's in the US, Canada, the Americas, Europe, Asia, you need to be able to support the enterprise, right? And the enterprise needs some consistency. They need autonomous systems so they don't have to crank up a huge labor force everywhere that footprint is, right? And they need to be able to scale, they need to be able to descale. They need to be able to change and adapt quickly to business changes. And if they've got let's just say 7 different service providers. Well, and each one of them have them locked down in various ways with various contracts, then how easy is it to adapt? How easy is it to change your business process? How easy is it to move out of that particular service provider because you've sold that part of your business, or you changed that side of your business and it's going to be a lot smaller or different than it was before.
Mhm.
That adaptation curve today is very costly in a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment because you have so many dependencies, right? And so you need that homogeneous management system that's able to put down a management fabric and manage the enterprise across its footprint.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and Verge is perfectly positioned to kind of enable this. I mean, I think, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we are. I think so. We were a little too early, right? But we developed our flagship product, SentientDB, right as people were starting to get into multi-cloud. But it was strictly the early adopters, right? As the philosophy was for most enterprises was still trying to get everything into an AWS or something, right? But the reality is taken over in the fact that that's just not the way enterprise operates. And if the service providers really want a bigger portion of that enterprise's market, right, then they have to adapt their business model to actually support the enterprise in what they need to do, right? And today, I don't believe they're doing that. I believe today they're still in silos and they don't really care about wherever else the enterprise is or what they're doing. They only care about their cloud. But I think if they would look at their business models, there's would be a lot of opportunity out there to really service the enterprise.
Yeah, and you would be happy to help them do that, I'm
I
sure.
would. We would. Our Sentient DB is it was designed for hybrid cloud, multi-cloud management environments to provide a unified management plane within and across all of those compute nodes and service providers. So you got a single view of that asset, and you can manage that asset individually, or you can manage them as a group of assets across your entire enterprise. That fabric can be duplicated for applications, not only databases. It could be used again to look at arbitrage opportunities, being able to move from one to another. I mean, if you can move an application and move a database with zero downtime from one service provider to the other, then it opens up a lot of opportunity for being able to optimize IT costs, optimize and improve quality, improve resilience and fault tolerance, and serve your enterprise needs in a better way.
Yeah, yeah. So in a way, it used to be that we were thinking about the computer and the server as the work unit. Then it became the data center. Then it became the cloud, which is the sort of like the work unit. And now,
Yeah, I'm losing you, Fernando. I think you froze up on me, man.
yeah. How about right now? Am I
Yeah,
back?
you're fuzzy, but your voice is clear now.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it'll fix itself when it get processes. So
Yeah,
kind of going back through the timeline of history, it used to be that the computer and the server was sort of like the work unit, and then the data center, and then the cloud was the work unit. And now it looks like as though the total universe of clouds is the work. In other words, your workspace, your data, where you have your data, your applications, you mentioned arbitrage. It's almost like the world is your computer in a way.
well, it is, and that's the way that you need to look at it, in the fact that that's the way the enterprise operates, right? And so they need a homogeneous type of management systems that will be able to, no matter where on the globe they are, they manage it the same way with the same systems. Whether it's in a where it's hosted shouldn't matter, right? Whether it's hosted in a data center, whether it's hosted with a global service provider, or regional or local service provider, none of that should matter. What matters is the asset, is the database, is the application that's moving and helping your enterprise be competitive, make money, open new markets. That is the important thing. It's not whether it's in AWS or any number of 500 others around the globe. The important thing is it stays running and it does its job and it provides you the data that you need in order to run your enterprise, right? And so you need to be able to abstract the thought process from AWS. The enterprise needs this asset running, period, right? And it doesn't matter where it's hosted, because wherever it's hosted, I can improve the resilience, the uptime, zero downtime, being able to balance workloads within and across different cloud providers in order to optimize the performance of that asset, because that asset's what's important to me, not where it's hosted, right? So being able to think about it in a different way, I think is where enterprises are going to need to be. And I think ultimately that's going to drive the service providers to be able to optimize what the enterprise wants.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of brings up a question of, so if the service providers are going to open their eyes and finally say, okay, well, we're leaving money on the table, we need to do this, then that brings up the question is, okay, are they going to use something like a SentientDB, or are they going to invent their own thing? I think, the rising tide floats all boats. If it would be great if everybody uses SentientDB, but it was also be good if there is a category upon atop which SentientDB is sitting, but there's also other competitors. There's a recognized legitimate category around the same type of stuff. Like how do you see that playing out? Are you afraid of people developing similar proprietary technologies to yours, or do you think that anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not afraid of that, right? I welcome that, because the more of those that come on board and are in the market, the more it validates our decision to come here from the start, right? And I think there would be a lot of opportunity as those type of anonymous management systems come on board, that there's would be huge integration opportunities there, right? So if you think about the data that's driving the mobility of moving that database to a different hosting environment, to a larger server, to split the workload across multiple servers, doing all that in real time based upon something that was detected 2 hours ago, right? And now has been corrected so that problem's not going to happen, right? So you say, well, wow, what about network management systems that are looking at network congestion and traffic that are out there? And those could be AI managed as well. But wow, what if that network management system could tell me what it was predicting about network congestion and traffic 2 hours from now, based upon the load that it had today? And then I could take those servers and move them to a different network, which would again enhance their performance, reduce downtime, and reduce the possibility of that network congestion slowing down or causing an outage. And you can take that to other risk systems, the cybersecurity systems, for example. The opportunity would exist there that, if you start getting security alerts, that, two or three things that we could do with that integration, right? One of them is, of course, we could just pick up the database and move it to a different network, right? Or because we know all the processes that are running in that database, right? And we know which processes are starting and stopping. In other words, we know the behavior, the normal behavior of that database. When that database starts to have something new that's running, or something different that shows up, we just send an alert to the cybersecurity system, said, look at this. Is this bad? We can just stop that process. We can stop that process on that database so that it protects your data, right? So we can do a lot of those things in interfaces with other systems to really grow a self-managing, self-healing IT environment that's fully encompassing, not just databases, right? Not just applications, but a homogeneous management system that's self-correcting, self-healing, is fault tolerance, that produces resilience across all these factors. That's possible. As a matter of fact, that's possible today.
So there's really a cascading effect here where, this tech, these type of technologies can predict network traffic, can predict security risks, and they can all work together and coordinate together in an autonomous
Absolutely.
fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not the competition doesn't scare me, but the opportunities excite me. I mean, if I just think about, all those individual systems that are just working autonomously by themselves today, gosh, what if we could start tying that together?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, last question, because we've gotten a lot of really good information here, and I can't believe we've already had 30 minutes go by. It seems like as though we've only talked
I
for
know
10
it.
minutes.
I could talk about this for hours, my friend, but I
Yeah.
don't want to bore everybody to tears.
So, no, it's fascinating. We are back, Jimmy. We were having connectivity issues, or rather, I was having connectivity issues. But let's get back to the conversation we were having, which was super interesting. And what I wanted to ask you was, what is driving all the data? So, and I'll name the usual suspects in my mind, at least. There's all the online ordering data that clients, that e-commerce companies use. There's all the data from online companies by services like Riverside, what we're using right now, real-time communication. There's all what is the data that's driving this surge in the need for, you know platform or cloud agnostic, flexible, self-healing services?
Yeah. Uh, good question. So I don't want to be a cop out, but I'm going to say everything because everything is driving it because it is. If you look at different types of company out there, whether they're in the fintech and the financial thing, whether it's the Merrill Lynches of the world, or whether it's the U.S. Bank or Bank of America or whoever, Chase, whoever it is, that financial world, they have the same issues that the people in manufacturing have, right? And that is, it's about aggregating data. It's about pulling data in from various parts of the organization. It's about making sense of that data in order to drive your supply chains, in order to drive your manufacturing, in order to drive those financial orders of buy and sell and what's going to happen. So it's everybody. It's the commerce of the world that's driving the data and the quantities of data. Back 10 years ago, they would say that data is doubling every 2 years. And you say, well, what does that mean? He says, well, in the next 2 years, we will generate more data than has ever been generated since the beginning of time, and we'll do the same thing the next 2 years. That acceleration is only getting worse. The latest estimates I've heard is that could be doubling data every 9 months to a year now. So the amount of data we generate, someone has to work through that. So not all of it's the same value. Not all of it's going to drive your company to the next level, but some of it is, right? And so, you've got to separate, if you would, the wheat from the chaff, and you've got to be able to take that data that is good and use it as through analysis and decision support to drive your company to the next level, right? And be able to navigate it better than your competition, right? So there is a lot of things that are driving the data, and if you look at even the new world, the new side that's generating data, look at the satellite systems. Look at Musk. Look at Bezos. Look at all the people that are putting thousands and thousands of satellites up in the air, right? And you think, well, what's that going to do? That's going to drive a lot of data, right? That's going to drive a lot of data, and it's going to drive people that didn't have access to markets through their cell phones, through coverage, to be able to order goods, to be able to provide services that they could never provide before. So I look for that explosion to continue to accelerate.
Yeah, I was as you were saying that, I was thinking about, you know, connectivity in places like rural Africa, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you say, well, and to kind of couple along with that internet access is the ability of, cryptocurrency gets good and bad reviews, and for all the reasons we know. I mean, there's no use to retread that conversation. But where it can help is if you're in countries where the monetary means, the dollars or whatever that they have is not stable and it goes
Yeah.
up and down. That cryptocurrency can provide those people in those countries a stable monetary platform in order to sell their goods and services that their own current country can't provide today.
Yeah.
So it opens up lots of doors around the world so that people can contribute to the world economy that haven't had that opportunity before.
Yes, yes. That's fascinating. So, you know, if we were to summarize our whole conversation, first of all, we have this situation of the never ending, of the perpetual doubling of data. Companies having to handle data across geographies, and they need to be able to seamlessly control it and move it without having to worry about whether they're locked up into some kind of proprietary data center. We're looking at the cloud providers kind of hanging on to redundant business models, trying to hang on for dear life, for keeping people in their walled gardens, whereas they could probably take advantage of the types of technologies, the AI driven technologies that SentientDB is a perfect example of predictive, being able to predict traffic, data surges, throttles or bottlenecks, security risks, to be able to do self-healing, all this so that companies can see all of their data within a single fabric, a single pane of
Yeah.
glass.
I think that's it, Fernando. I guess the other thing I would add is that the current environments that are out there where enterprises are having to utilize 4 to 7 different service providers to support their enterprise footprint. If you think about what does that in turn force, it forces the enterprise to sub-optimize their business processes in order to control cost and
Right.
access. So you end up, in order to control ingress and egress fees and all of the things that get piled upon you anytime you move data, they are segmenting business processes within those silos, those vertical silos, so they don't have to move that data, right? And so they end up sub-optimizing their global enterprise processes in order to try to facilitate cost-effective IT management. Whereas if you could give those enterprises a green field and allow them to optimize their business processes around the company strategies and goals, that enterprise could run a lot faster than what it's running today, having to
Yeah.
sub-optimize their processes.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And I think that the future is, some people like to sort of, the half glass empty people like to think that the future looks glum and that the world is falling apart. But I'm like you. I see this as
Yeah.
it's exciting. The future is
It
exciting.
gives me hope. It excites me. It tells me that there are limitless opportunities that are going to be with us over the next 5 years to really make a difference and to really be able to help people and help people with their companies.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for all of your insights today, Jimmy. And we will see everybody next time in the next episode of the Verge Technologies
Thank
podcast.
you, everyone. Bye bye.